Welcome to Life Stories. Imagine discovering, in an instant, that the people you trusted the most were the very ones tearing everything you've built apart. Caleb Harris thought he was in control, thought he understood his family's business inside and out. But when the walls started closing in, when the complaints piled up and the promises broke, he was left with a harsh truth. The empire his father built was on the verge of crumbling, and it was his own team who had put it there. What do you do when the ones you've relied on become your greatest betrayal? Can trust ever be rebuilt? And if so, at what cost? Stay with us as Caleb faces a crossroads, one that will either save his company or destroy everything he's worked for. Let's dive into the heart of the story. Caleb Harris sat in the back seat of his worn-out rental truck, eyes narrowed as he stared through the windshield at the faded sign that hung over the garage. Harris Auto Repair. His family's legacy, built from the ground up by his father, who had passed away 2 years ago. Caleb had taken the reins after his father's sudden death, but what he hadn't anticipated was how quickly the business would fall apart under the weight of neglect and poor management. The garage used to be a bustling hub, every bay filled, employees working efficiently, customers leaving with a smile. But now, as Caleb looked at the crumbling walls of this once thriving place, he saw something different. The paint was peeling, the equipment rusting, and the air was thick with the smell of oil and something else, something he couldn't quite place. Failure? Disappointment? Maybe it was both. He had been hearing complaints for months now, long wait times, shoddy repairs, customers walking out the door. But Caleb had always trusted the people he put in charge. He trusted Michael, his district manager, who assured him everything was running smoothly. He trusted Chris, the head mechanic, to keep the crew in line. He even trusted Ryan, a new hire with potential, to make the front desk a welcoming space. But all of that trust felt like it was slipping through his fingers like sand. The accusations were piling up, and Caleb needed to know the truth. His decision was made. He would go undercover. No announcement, no heads up, just a regular guy looking for work. He shaved off his clean-cut look, grew a stubbled beard, and donned old jeans and a weathered hoodie. No one would recognize him. He was determined to find out what had really gone wrong with his father's empire. The moment Caleb stepped into the garage, the atmosphere hit him like a punch to the gut. Mechanics were working, but there was no rhythm to their movements. They were just going through the motions, sweat dripping from their brows, tools scattered haphazardly on the floor. The clanging of metal echoed through the air, but it wasn't the sound of efficiency. It was the sound of a company falling apart. "Hey, new guy," Chris called from across the room. His voice was sharp, dismissive. "Get to work. Don't just stand there like a deer in headlights." Caleb nodded, hiding the tightness in his chest, and walked over to the cluttered workbench. He grabbed a set of dirty gloves and pulled them on, pretending to be absorbed in his task. But he wasn't just observing the chaos in the garage. He was feeling it. The energy was off. The team was off. It wasn't just bad. It was broken. And somehow Caleb knew deep down that the people he trusted weren't just failing to manage this place. They were actively making it worse. As he worked alongside Ryan, Caleb noticed something troubling. The tools were in terrible shape. Ratchets held together with duct tape, wrenches bent out of shape, sockets cracked. This wasn't just bad management, Caleb thought. This was neglect. Ryan glanced at him, a nervous look in his eyes. "Don't ask. We've been putting in orders for new stuff for months now, but they just keep pushing it off. Management doesn't care." The words stung. Caleb felt a knot tighten in his stomach. His father's business had always been about treating people right. Employees, customers, everyone. And here, in the heart of it, there was nothing but broken promises. Later that day, as Caleb wiped oil off his hands in the break room, he overheard Michael talking loudly about doing the bare minimum and keeping the company afloat. Caleb's heart sank. It wasn't just the mechanics who were at fault. It was the people at the top who were failing them. By the time the day ended, Caleb's mind was racing with questions. How had things gotten this bad? Was it all Michael's fault? Or was it something deeper? Something he hadn't been able to see from the boardroom. He needed answers. He needed to understand what was happening to the company his father had built. As Caleb stood up to leave the garage that evening, something unexpected happened. A woman in her 60s approached the front counter, her face tired but hopeful. "My car's been here for 2 hours," she said quietly. "Can someone tell me when it'll be ready?" The response from Chris was sharp and unprofessional. "Maybe if you didn't drive that old piece of junk, you wouldn't need so much work done." The woman's face crumpled as she turned and walked out. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Caleb's jaw clenched. This was the final straw. He couldn't stand by any longer. He stormed into the office where Michael was sitting, pretending to be busy. Caleb ripped the door open and slammed it against the wall. "That's not how you treat a customer, Michael," he snapped. "And that's not how this company operates anymore." Michael's eyes widened in shock. "You got a problem, Joe?" he sneered, clearly not recognizing Caleb. With a deep breath, Caleb pulled out his wallet, flipping it open to reveal his ID. "I'm Caleb Harris," he said, his voice steady, "and this is my company, and what I see here is not what my father built." The silence that followed was deafening. The realization hit Michael like a freight train. The shock on his face quickly turned to rage. "You're full of it," he spat. But Caleb didn't flinch. "You're fired," Caleb said, voice cold. "And so are you, Chris. Get your things and leave." The workers in the garage stared, their eyes wide with disbelief. They had never seen anything like this. For the first time, they saw a leader who cared enough to fight for them. "I'm going to fix this," Caleb said, turning to the remaining staff. "Starting now. No more excuses. No more make it work. You all deserve better than this, and I'm going to make sure you get it." As Caleb walked out into the cool evening air, he could feel the weight of the decision settling in his chest. This wasn't just about fixing the garage. It was about restoring trust. Trust in the business, trust in the team, and trust in the legacy his father had left behind. How much does it hurt to realize that the people you trusted most have been sabotaging everything you built? Will Caleb be able to rebuild this broken company, or has the damage already been done beyond repair? Caleb stood in front of the garage, the night sky heavy with rain, wondering what the future would bring. Tomorrow he'd be back, and this time it wouldn't be just about saving the garage. It would be about saving the people inside it. But could they save themselves? Would anyone be left to fight with him? Only time would tell. And Caleb wasn't about to give up now. The morning after the confrontation, Caleb walked into the garage with a weight on his chest that felt heavier than any tool he had ever carried. The air inside was still thick with uncertainty, the lingering remnants of an old way of working, a system that had fallen apart long before he ever stepped foot back in this place. The once gleaming lifts were covered in grease, the floor still stained from the countless hours of neglect. But this time, Caleb wasn't here to fix things with words. He was here to change everything, to dig into the heart of the company and pull out what had been festering beneath the surface. Angela Ruiz, the temporary operations manager he had called in to help, was already there. She was sharp, calculated, and didn't hesitate to take charge. Caleb admired her for it, but he knew this wasn't going to be easy. They had to rebuild the team, reestablish the trust, and prove to the world that Harris Auto Repair wasn't a dying business. It was going to take more than just hiring new faces. It was going to take heart, sweat, and a lot of tough decisions. As Caleb stepped into the garage, he saw Brooke immediately. She was bent over a car, her injured ankle now wrapped tightly in an improvised brace. Her limp was still noticeable, but there was something in the way she worked now. Something new. It wasn't just physical exhaustion that weighed her down. It was the burden of carrying a team that had been let down, that had lost faith in leadership. "Hey," Caleb called, walking toward her. "How's the ankle?" She glanced up at him, her face still tight, but she gave a small nod. "I'm fine. Just trying to get through the day." Caleb wanted to tell her to take it easy, to go home, to rest, but he knew better. Brooke wasn't the type to back down, not now, not when everything was on the line. As he made his way further into the shop, he noticed the rest of the crew was there too. Tyler, Marcus, and Dee. They all seemed a little more alert, more aware of the task ahead, but the tension in the room was undeniable. The storm that had been brewing for months was coming to a head. They knew something big was happening, but they didn't yet know what it would mean for them, for the company, for their futures. Angela met Caleb's gaze from across the room. She was standing by a stack of paperwork, her arms crossed, looking calm in the face of the chaos. "We're going to need to make some serious decisions today," she said, her voice steady but firm. "We can't keep running the way we have. Not if we want this place to survive." "I know," Caleb replied, his mind racing. "I'm not just fixing the garage. I'm fixing everything, but I need you to help me figure out who's really on board with this." The crew gathered, forming a semicircle around Caleb. His eyes moved from face to face. He saw the uncertainty in them, but he also saw something else. Something he hadn't expected. Hope. "We start fresh," Caleb said, his voice carrying through the room. "This is no longer just about turning a profit. This is about rebuilding a company that stands for something. We're going to treat our employees like family again, and we're going to show our customers that we care about them." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, but before Caleb could continue, a familiar voice interrupted the moment. "You think this place can turn around with a few speeches, Caleb?" It was Michael. He had stormed back into the garage without warning, his face flushed with anger. Caleb's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Michael to show his face again so soon. He was still reeling from the shock of firing him, and now here he was, back like nothing had happened. "Get out, Michael," Caleb said, his tone colder than he had intended. Michael laughed, a dry, bitter sound that filled the room. "You really think you can fix everything, huh? This garage has been going under long before I ever stepped in here. You think you can just sweep the mess away with some new hires and a shiny speech?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "I know what you've been doing. You're the one who let this happen. Don't come in here pretending you still have a say in anything." Michael took a step forward, his eyes flashing with fury. "You think you're so different, don't you? You're just like me. You're trying to fix a system that was broken from the start. But here's the truth. The people who matter, the people who really run this place, they don't care about your speeches. They care about getting paid and getting out of here." The words hit Caleb like a slap in the face. A cold truth he hadn't wanted to hear. Was that really what it had all come down to? A few months ago, he had trusted Michael to keep things running smoothly, to uphold the legacy his father had built. And now? Now it was clear that Michael had been part of the problem, not the solution. The room grew silent. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest. He had trusted too many of the wrong people. He had turned a blind eye for too long, and now the cracks were showing. As Michael turned to leave, a deep conflict stirred within Caleb. He wanted to tell him to leave for good, to make sure Michael never stepped foot in the shop again, but something in Caleb hesitated. Was firing him the right move? Would that just make things worse? Would Michael's departure shake the very foundations of what he was trying to rebuild? His gaze shifted to Brooke, who had been watching the exchange quietly. Her face was set in a mask of quiet determination, but Caleb could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She had been through so much already. Was she ready to carry the weight of the business forward, knowing that some of her teammates might not be fully on board with the change? The decision weighed heavily on Caleb. He wasn't just fighting for the company anymore. He was fighting for the people, his team, his family, and that was the hardest part of all. Can Caleb truly rebuild everything from the ground up, or is there a deeper betrayal still lurking within the walls of Harris Auto Repair? As Caleb wrestles with the moral complexities of leadership, will he be able to trust the very people he's fighting to save? Or will his past mistakes continue to haunt him? The next few days would decide everything. Caleb wasn't sure if he was ready for the full weight of what was coming, but one thing was certain, he wasn't backing down now. And as the rain poured outside the garage, the storm inside was just beginning. Caleb stood in the now clean garage, the scent of fresh paint and polished metal filling the air, a stark contrast to the once rancid atmosphere. It had been weeks since the initial overhaul, since that unforgettable confrontation with Michael and the decision to rebuild Harris Auto Repair from the ground up. The place looked different now, brighter, cleaner, more organized, but it was the people who had truly changed. Brooke moved swiftly across the floor, her limp barely noticeable now as she directed the team. Tyler was right beside her, looking more confident than Caleb had ever seen him, managing the intake process with surprising skill. The whole garage was in sync, working as a cohesive unit, and Caleb couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. He'd done it. They had done it. The impossible was slowly becoming possible. The changes they had worked so hard for were starting to take root. Yet, even as he watched the new team members adjusting to their roles and the customers walking in with smiles on their faces, a deep sense of unease lingered in the pit of his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. Angela Ruiz, who had played a crucial role in bringing stability to the team, approached Caleb with a clipboard in hand. Her expression was calm but purposeful. "How are we doing?" she asked, her voice steady. "We're getting there," Caleb replied, wiping his hand over his face. "But there's something more to this, Angela. It's not just about cleaning up the shop. It's about cleaning up what's been broken for years." Angela paused, her eyes sharp with understanding. "You're not just fixing the physical, Caleb. You're fixing the soul of this place. But it's not going to happen overnight. People are still holding on to old habits, to the old ways of thinking." Caleb knew she was right. There was still much work to do, but it wasn't just about the physical transformation of the garage. It was about the emotional and psychological change he had to foster in himself and in the people who worked with him. Trust, once broken, could never be repaired without effort, and even though the garage was slowly recovering, Caleb couldn't shake the fear that it could all fall apart if he wasn't careful. The door to the garage swung open, and in walked a familiar face, Michael. The sight of him hit Caleb like a jolt of electricity, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. His first instinct was to tell him to leave, to call security, to never let this man back into the place he had betrayed so fully. But then he saw it. Michael's shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow, like a man who had lost everything. "I need to talk to you," Michael said, his voice hoarse. Caleb took a deep breath, fighting the flood of emotions that rose inside him. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he knew he had to listen. He owed it to himself, to the team, and to the legacy his father had left behind. "Fine," Caleb replied, motioning for him to follow. They stepped the cold air, the gray sky threatening rain as Michael started speaking. "I messed up, Caleb," Michael said, his voice filled with regret. "I made mistakes. I know I did. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about, I don't know, control, power. I got comfortable in my position, and I stopped caring. I forgot what your father taught us, that this place was about family, about people, and I lost sight of that." Caleb stood silently, processing his words. Part of him wanted to turn his back and walk away, to never have to hear Michael's excuses again. But another part of him, something deep inside that had always believed in redemption, knew that if he didn't listen now, he would never truly understand what had happened. "I tried to fix things," Michael continued, his voice breaking. "I tried to make it right, but it was too late. I was already too far gone, and I see now that I can't undo it. But maybe I can help. Maybe I can help you fix it." The offer hung in the air like a fragile thread. Caleb's heart raced. Could he trust Michael again? Could he let this man who had so deeply betrayed him back into the fold? But looking at Michael now, his weary face, the defeat in his eyes, Caleb realized something. The man in front of him wasn't the same person who had walked into the garage weeks ago. This man was broken, humbled, and finally ready to do the work it took to rebuild. Caleb hesitated. He had to make a decision, and it wasn't going to be easy. But deep down, he knew he couldn't keep fighting this battle alone. His father had built this company on trust and loyalty, and while it had been shattered, maybe it was worth trying to rebuild that trust, not just for the business, but for himself. Okay, Caleb said quietly. You want to help? Then you're going to prove it. No more words, no more excuses. You're going to start at the bottom with the team. And if you're willing to do that, maybe, just maybe, we can make this work. Michael nodded, his face a mixture of relief and determination. I'll do whatever it takes. As they walked back into the garage together, Caleb felt a sense of unease still lingering, but there was something else too. A flicker of hope. Could this be the start of something new? Could he really forgive, rebuild, and move forward? The question echoed in his mind as they approached the team. It wasn't just about the physical space anymore. It was about the people. The next few months were a blur. Slowly, Caleb watched as Michael proved himself. He was no longer the arrogant manager he once was. He worked side by side with the team, earning their trust one step at a time. Brooke, Tyler, Marcus, and Dee, they all saw the change. They all saw that Caleb wasn't just rebuilding the garage. He was rebuilding something much more valuable, trust. In the end, the garage wasn't just a symbol of what had been saved. It was a testament to what could still be rebuilt. The walls were still scarred, but the heart of Harris Auto Repair was stronger than it had ever been. As Caleb stood outside, watching the sunset cast long shadows across the parking lot, he knew this journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid. He had his team back, and together, they could face whatever came next. What do you think about Caleb's decision to allow Michael back into the company? Do you believe in second chances? Or was it a mistake? If you like this story, comment 100 and let me know your thoughts. Where are you watching from? Share this video with your friends, and thank you for watching Life Stories.